In this video lecture, I'm going to cover lethal alleles and test crosses. So let's start with a little thought statement here. Lethal dominant alleles are less common than lethal recessive alleles. I want you to take a moment, maybe pause the video, and explain why this statement is true. So dominant alleles that are lethal are less common than recessive alleles that are lethal because when you inherit a dominant allele, the dominant trait shows. And if that trait is lethal, meaning it kills you, that dominant trait will not be passed on to offspring because you won't live long enough to pass it on. Whereas if you have a recessive allele, you could carry that recessive allele, which is also lethal, but if it's paired with a dominant allele that isn't lethal, you won't die. And so you can pass on that lethal recessive allele to your children because it's not going to kill you. But if you have a dominant allele that's lethal, you'll automatically die. It won't be passed on, whereas a lethal recessive allele can be passed on. You can still have it and it won't show. Okay, so that's why this statement is true. Moving on to another kind of thought experiment. Let's say that purple flowers are dominant over white flowers. Let's say that I have a plant that has purple flowers. I want to figure out whether its genotype is homozygous dominant or heterozygous, right? Both would code for purple flowers because they have the dominant allele, but how could I tell which it is? Maybe pause the video and think about it for a second. And then I'm going to tell you how. So the answer to the question is to do a test cross. A test cross is basically a cross that you're going to do. You're going to mate your plant with another plant that has a known genotype to it in order to determine the unknown genotype of your plant that's showing, or your organism that's showing the dominant trait. And the key is that you're going to cross your organism that has a dominant trait, but you don't know the genotype of it, with a homozygous recessive organism. So I don't know if this purple plant is, I hate that they're using the letter P, but I don't know if it's homozygous dominant or heterozygous. But if I cross it with a plant that I know is homozygous recessive, based on whatever the genotype of my purple flowered plant is, I will get one of two outcomes from this test cross. So, right, we said purple flowers are dominant over white. I don't know if this is homozygous dominant or heterozygous. I'm going to cross it with a homozygous recessive plant. If the purple flowered plant, my original plant that I don't know the genotype of, is homozygous dominant, so these are its alleles over here, and I cross it with a homozygous recessive, which these are the white flowered plant's alleles up here, every single one of my offspring should have purple flowers. They will all be heterozygous. If my original plant is heterozygous, so big P, little p, so these are its alleles over here, crossed with a homozygous recessive plant up here, the offspring will come out 50-50. Half of them will come out purple, they'll be heterozygous. The other half will come out white because they will be homozygous recessive. So by crossing my organism that I know is showing the dominant trait, it has a dominant allele, but I don't know what genotype it is, by crossing that with a homozygous recessive plant that I know is homozygous recessive, based on the outcome of the children, I can tell what the genotype of my original organism is. So if they all come out to be identical to the original, then it's homozygous dominant. And if they come out 50-50, it's heterozygous. And that's how you do a test cross.